lot of people that continue to join here this morning. And good morning, I'm Dan Gay, Chief Marketing Officer of BlockSearch Blockchain. And we're here with our weekly Friday webinar that's become very, very popular around the globe. And it's called The World From Here. Where do we go post-COVID-19? And we're joined here with Michael Hummel, who's the CEO of Advantage Basketball Camps. Good morning, Michael. How are you?
Good morning. Thanks for asking. I'm good. You?
Good, thank you. And we had quite a few questions from for you. And the one takeaway last week that I had from you is that in every tragedy is the seed for opportunity. And that's really a theme, I think, for any business moving forward is how do you look past and beyond where we are? And that was just an awesome statement. And I also see Dinesh join us here from Mauritius. Thank you so much for joining us from your Friday night again, kind of take your Friday night again from you. So good evening, Dinesh.
Good evening, Dan. Good evening, everybody.
Hi, Dinesh. How are you? Good to see you.
Great to have you on again. And the one, well, we had quite a few takeaways from you as well, but the one thing that really stuck with me was care versus profit. And we have quite a few questions with that we'll ask you here in a minute. And also you were talking about tokenization for financing. We also have Daniele Mincy, who is...
Hi, guys.
Good morning, Daniele, the president of Fusion SDX. And I'm sorry, Dinesh, I didn't state your title, but the CEO and chairman of the board of, how do you say your company's name so I don't get this right?
It's called Bhumish. It's a Sanskrit word. It means a love for the land.
And then we also have Tim Vasco, who's the CEO and founder and chief architect of BlockSearch Blockchain. Good morning, Tim.
Hi, Dan. How are you?
Great, thank you. So with that, let's get started. We only have 30 minutes. We have more and more people that continue to join us here, and it's great to have these Friday calls. And the other thing I didn't mention, we had a lot of questions for you, Daniele, as well, which you talked about tokenization and derivative financials, and then how we can help other sports teams, and there were all kinds of questions there. So the first thing I think I'll start off with, because it really impacts everybody here, is what is a tokenization business model? Because that's something that came through on quite a few different questions. So
I can answer.
Start us?
It's very simple. Tokenization is the process of creating a digital identity of an underlying asset. Okay. Then this can be extended also not only to asset, meaning physical asset, but also to rights of use, payments, and even actions. So I create a token to, for example, to vote for something. That's not an underlying asset, that is not a payment, it's just like a voting token, which allow me to perform an action. So in the finance world, tokenization means create a digital container of an underlying asset, so as this can be easily exchanged, and eventually can be also traded over digital markets.
Which is the second question that we had, which is how do you raise capital in digital markets, which really hits everybody.
It's fascinating because these will be one of the major areas of development to create a very new fintech world that will help a small, medium enterprise to grow and to grow faster. If we look at the word before COVID and the word after COVID. So the fact that we create the token, to which extent these will speed up the process of fundraising. Because if you issue, so if you own the rights, if you have an asset and you create this digital identity, you create a much simpler process to have potential investor to step in and buy this token in exchange of money. Money could be either Bitcoin or could be also fiat money. So why this improves the traditional fundraising schemes is because, number one, this can reach a global audience because the token can be addressed. It depends how it's being built and which regulatory requirement fulfills. And in very simple term, a token creates, first of all, the opportunity for all people in the world to step into this investment, number one, so it's more democratic. And number two, it simplifies a lot of complicated processes which are behind the traditional fundraising scheme. There is a lot of paperwork. So it's much more direct because transaction is being done as much as possible between who owns the token, so the issuer, and who buys the token. There's no people in between.
It's direct and it's immediate, correct?
Correct.
And I'll ask that of you, Tim, and then I'll go to Dinesh because there's been a lot of questions about that in terms of Africa and Mauritius as well. So Tim, tokenization business models.
So a business model, I agree with Daniele. The other side of this is kind of the functional or practical operational side of it. So the operational side of it means when we enter into any transaction, we always have these things that Daniele said. So we have finance, we have actions. We take an action, we do financing, we have authentication. If you talk about Michael's business, where you want to identify, authenticate that this is a real coach and what they're doing with the kids and things like that, of course. We have all those things. So it's the practical things we do every single day in a business. And the other side, so when we put that into an environment or an ecosystem, we call it the secure virtual space, we put it into one of these containers, we can now see exactly what happened, and we get rid of a huge amount of friction and lost information that leads to things like he said, she said, which you're very familiar with, Dan. Right? So the he said, she said, I thought this, you did that. That leads to litigation. It leads to things. I should pay you. I shouldn't pay you. You know, just the really practical stuff we deal with every day that I think in a post-COVID world, we're looking at having to eliminate that kind of waste and really get down to what are the economics, because that's just waste. And it's built trillion-dollar global problems. It's built the legal industry. It's built the accounting industry, frankly. That's where audits come from, and companies that fail, like Enron and the big famous ones, MCI, as you know all too well, Dan.
Unfortunately.
Unfortunately. So business model tokenization means transforming the way business is done. And the one that struck me, and I won't go into this today, but I think it's going to be a fascinating case study, is the idea of what's happening to the airline industry now. So you've got the airline industry. This week, in one day, the short sellers made $188 million. And so far, they've made $4 billion off of an industry that, I don't know about you guys, but I really don't want all the airlines to go away, right? I really, really don't.
Well, I don't want to have to pay for a $1,000 airline ticket either. And
yeah,
you can
exactly.
see how that could be a reality.
That could be a reality. And I want to be able to go jump on an airplane and go see Dinesh and Daniele and have them come visit Canada. And you know, Michael, I can come drive and see you, but or Dan, but I can't drive. In fact, the hardest place to drive to would be Mauritius, because I live on an island and Dinesh lives on an island. We're not, you know, and boating really isn't an option. So I'm on the boat today, but it would take me about half a year to get there. So I'd much rather do that in a 24-hour plane flight. So I think that when we look at the business model, and I'll just stop there, we need to look at these things that are emerging in this crisis and say, is our system built for dealing with something like this? It's not. It's just flat out, it isn't. There are ways that we can do a better business model. Some of the examples that we use fundamentally that Daniele said, and some of the things I gave you as examples there, I think we can achieve a lot with this new model of business and tokenization.
Yeah, I do too. And Dinesh, a lot of questions about Mauritius and Africa, care versus profit. Kind of take the same approach with tokenization, and also where you see this going. We had a lot of questions about, you know, how do we how do we take all the natural resources and all the great things that are in Africa and use that workforce that is a young workforce, and all kinds of questions. So
yeah, so I'll answer. I'll wear a lawyer hat for a minute.
Okay.
I am. Regarding Africa, tokenization, a major problem will be, as Daniel A. and team talked about, will be capital raising, capital markets. So tokenization could potentially provide kind of an alternative capital markets going forward. So what you have currently, let's say Africa, as we discussed last time, it's 54 countries, 54 different currencies, 54 different regulators. Remember, the financial services industry, capital markets, they're all highly regulated industry.
Right.
So where Mauritius could come in, a country like Mauritius, it could be something like what London is to Europe or Luxembourg is to Europe. It could be something like a financial center where Africa could concentrate its capital raising. As Daniel has said, Mauritius could be the jurisdiction, the regulatory jurisdiction, where you actually tokenize the assets, whether they're in Nigeria, whether they're in Kenya, and then you could raise money across the board. It will not be restricted only to African market, or to Nigerian market, or to Kenyan market, or to the South African market. And this is possible because Mauritius already has some kind of passporting rights with the different African countries that exist today. So this is how you position kind of Mauritius as a hub for capital markets for Africa. It would not have been possible if we were clearing, for instance, USD, because then, you know, you needed the Euroclear or the Clearstream of the world to be present there. But if it's tokenization, it could be a much faster route to market, I would suggest. And Africa would badly need capital raising, because a big question, like when we come back to the care versus profit, and I'll link it to tokenization in Africa, is the growth in Africa has usually been fueled by FDI. Now, pre-COVID, FDI was something that was moving around the world. Now everybody is looking inwards. So what happens to FDI post-COVID? Or would it be more intra-Africa trade that would drive financing across Africa? So it's very uncertain times in Africa, but of course, a lot of people are talking about tokenization as a potential of capital raising, but of course, you have all the regulatory questions that need to be answered. They haven't been worked out yet.
Right.
There's no yet.
They haven't been worked out yet, but a lot of capital is currently being raised versus tokens, obviously. And
I'm talking about yeah.
Yeah, and one of the things, Danielle, you pointed this out last week about you know, what Bitcoin's doing, and kind of where the historic markets have gone versus tokenization. So it's kind of interesting.
I mean, what happens right now in these days, I mean, I always have entry screen at my place and looking the price of Bitcoin and others, because we are in such an interesting timing. Bitcoin in 4 days from now will go through, it's called halving. It's a technical stuff that create inflation. It's a programmable inflation within the Bitcoin to reduce the clock of the production of the Bitcoin over time, so the cost of production will increase automatically, actually. This means we'll reduce somehow the supply of Bitcoin, and will create more scarcity. So in theory, these should increase the price, in theory. That's to one side. Bitcoin right now, it's mostly store value. It's not really being used as a means of exchange as a payment, but it's mostly store value. So people believe it will go up in value. Number two, so the fact that we merge, so the token, so the digital world, along with the cryptocurrencies, the digital currency, is a perfect match, because all this works if it's efficient, if it's cheap, if it's fast, and even more if it's peer-to-peer. So this means people to people can make transactions.
Great. And Michael, I'm going to get you into this conversation, because we've talked about tokenization in kind of a different way for your business, hero tokens and doing good. Can you talk a little bit about your vision of what you'd like to do.
With hero tokens and coins and
Yeah, how can you instill the right behaviors and provide something of value to people? And then the second thing, we'll talk a little bit in a different area, because we had a lot of questions about gaming and how to make money there, and other things. So I'll let you talk about the hero token.
yeah, well, again, that's going to bring us back to, can I reach 300 kids or 3 million kids?
Right.
So, and with that perspective, the hero coins are basically, kids will do services that can be set by their parents, for example, and they will be rewarded with a hero token for performing those services. And then I've got pay it forward tokens. So when somebody does a good deed for somebody, rather than asking for payment back, just give them a token and ask them to pass it on. And then we'd like to track that and see where that person takes that gift and gifts it forward and track that. Yeah. And again, when you're working with 300 people, cool. How fun to watch.
Yeah.
But when you're working with 3 million people and you watch that starting to multiply.
Right. Well, and that really dovetails into care versus profit and what you were talking about, Dinesh, last week too. So awesome. So there were a couple other questions about esports, and you seem to know a lot about the esports, and you're obviously in the sports area. But how do you see your business changing over the next couple of years, moving forward versus looking back with what we've been talking about?
In my business or in the realm of esports?
Well, I guess let's focus on your business, because I think it's a unique model of how you do things differently to expand and go into the new world.
Yeah, well, previously it was just the more camps I open, the more kids I can reach. And there's my business model in short.
Right.
When you can't gather in groups more than a few kids, that model is kind of not working. As a matter of fact, it's completely dead right now. So how do we move forward trying to keep that same philosophy of reaching the kids and working with them? And it's been an amazing couple of weeks as people have been reaching out to me and I've been talking with them. I was talking with one of my coaches yesterday, and he just did a little short training video for one of the kids, and one of the coaches asked him, can I see that? And so he sent it to him, and he forwarded it on to other coaches. So he's getting phone calls of people wanting to buy his little videos for him, because how do we reach these kids when everybody's on lockdown?
Well, and I totally see with where you're going, the network effect of what you just described, because everyone has access to video and everyone has a voice, and allowing that to expand and grow, boy, it's kind of like the growth of YouTube in a way.
Yeah, and the more I think it through this and getting into it, the more I get excited and can't wait to get up and get after it, kind of thing.
Right.
Yeah, because it's got endless, where you go with even the data is just amazing. And there's just, you start off, we're going to create a whole series of free training videos for kids. The same things we're teaching at camp.
Right.
And then we're going to add those positive motivation messages to it. And we're going to put that out there for no charge. But the snowball effect of that is just amazing. We can start adding educators. It's endless.
It is, and I can already see it. I mean, it's just clear as day where this is going. So.
Yeah, so I went from a business, it's done. It's shut of my life. I built the world's largest basketball network, for gosh sakes.
Right.
And I wake up one morning and, oh, sorry, you can't run your business anymore. And and that's kind of sad, but it's not sad, because through all this, I've met you guys and Tim, and here's all these ideas coming, and all of a sudden I went from working on a business that was successful to having something that can be 1,000,000 times better.
Right.
And so my tragedy, I found my seed, and here we go.
Yeah.
And Michael, I love that. I just wanted to jump in and mention that, because what's been occurring to me lately, and I actually wrote an article about this yesterday morning at 4 in the morning, because it just kind of struck me what you just said, which is what we've learned is how this digital world we live in, this digital wrapper, really extends our businesses and extends us all over the globe. I mean, look at what we're doing right here. And we were so busy. I was in the business. I was already doing this, but I was always trying to convince guys who are so busy doing everything else, hey, we should really do this. And all of a sudden, it's like the world woke up and said, hey, we should really do this, right? and it is that realization of you can impact 300 people or you can impact 3 million, whether it's kids, whether it's people in Africa, whether it's people in Italy or all over the globe. We're more connected in many ways, in every way, than ever before, right? And we found that all this technology that's existed literally, think about this. This has happened in 2 months. In 2 months. We didn't invent anything. It was all sitting there on the shelf, ready to be lifted off and put into use. Yeah. So that just struck me, and you just said it. Like, you're like, wow, okay, now what? Because the blinders have come off of all of us, and we're like, my blinders in a lot of way came off too. We really can deploy across all these different kinds of use cases. I didn't think about sports before I met you. I didn't even, and I'm like, oh my God, virtual sports, esports, all that, like, and traditional sports being brought with a virtual wrapper around it. So it really affects and impacts lives in a different way, right?
Yeah, well, in the synergy of the community. So without getting into a whole long story, I flew to New Zealand to open up a camp there. And I learned all about the banking, and every country in the world except for the U.S. can kind of work with Switzerland banks, U.S. not so much. So I ran into a whole issue there. But the point is, I had to get on a plane. I didn't sleep for 3 days. I had to fly to Switzerland to set up this camp. Well, you know anybody in Africa that's building out a community? You know, we can have our community here. Hey, how do we help fund that with you? You know, I've got 1 million parents that would love to be involved in helping you do that. You know, you're connected to 1 million kids in Africa that would love to have a free throw shooting contest with 1 million kids in America. You know, the old model of getting on a plane, not sleeping for 3 days, the cost involved in that, the time going to Switzerland, thank you. Yeah. It's doing that, you know. Now I can send an email and say, hey, let's do this. Right.
Except you won't send an email, you'll send a private IM.
Well, there you go. Good point.
I see that we just had Dr. Zaid join us. Thanks for joining us. And I know last week you had emergency surgery, and your time is taxed. And we thank you for what you do. Thank you, Dr. Zaid. So,
thank you.
We've been asking quite a few questions. I have the next question is about wallets. And I think next week we'll talk a little bit more about e-health. But we had questions about what does a wallet do? How can you use a wallet? Can a wallet be used to trade other tokens? And so there are lots of questions about the wallet. And Tim, I'll start with you, but everybody can, we'll go around the horn here and talk about. So tell us about the wallet that you're about to roll out here and kind of functionality. And
well, actually, it's interesting. We just did our dev call this morning on where we're at with the wallet integration and what a wallet is. Like, again, this is a redefinition of what we think of as a wallet, but it's much more closely related to what we actually use our wallets for today, physical wallets. We've got our ID, we've got our credit cards, we've got our physical money in it. We probably have our health card in it. We have all of those things in our wallet. So,
including a list of prescriptions.
Yeah, our list of prescriptions are doctor's phone number, maybe on a little sheet of paper in case our phone's dead. Our emergency stuff. You bring up a good point, right? Or even even those bands that are on our wrist when you're in an emergency, you know, what's the first thing you think of? Somebody's going to at least find my wallet, right? When I'm unconscious. So these are all things that relate to a digital wallet. And the interesting thing is, we even have a project like that where if I just have a physical QR code, an attending emergency medical responder could scan my QR code and boom, because they're authenticated, can see everything about me. And we've been working on that project for actually a couple of years. So it's really fascinating what this redefinition, we talked about digital wrappers around business. We're also talking about a digital wrapper around people. And that wrapper will be extended to things like, can I walk in this place if I have a fever? Or, you know, can I, have I certified within the last 3 days that I got a clean bill of health? Is this really Tim walking in to do this transaction? And can I, Daniele was talking about peer-to-peer transactions. We remove friction, but we also increase security. This is Tim, and he's not walking in with a fake ID. And he does have this passport or his ID authenticated. So yes, that he can do this financial transaction. Mortgages, we've talked about that. Large financial transactions, that's hugely important. So the wallet is all of that, and it's really too big to answer in a short question, but hopefully I've illustrated what the wallet is. So when we build it, we do this thing, and it's 3 letters, IAM. So I am certain, right? And it's integrated access management, integrated with pretty much everything you do in your life. And because it's smart, it gets smarter and it gets more secure because as we go through this blockchain technology, the token carries along these transactions, and it knows that you did that transaction, where you were, and so forth. So it gets smarter about who you are. Access is private key. We talk a lot about that, but that means the private key, I, Zaid, Dinesh, Daniele, Michael, all get to control our access individually. Everybody does. It's my access, it's my key. And then finally, management. The way that we manage that becomes our choice, not some big, you know, corporate cloud that says you can have access or you can't. We're going to manage all your data for you. Thank you very much, but Facebook, not so much. I'm not really happy about that.
Right.
So that's IAM. That's the wallet. It's a very big question, Dan. I hope I kind of quickly illustrated what it means.
It does, and I'm going to ask you, Dinesh, next to comment on it. But Tim, just you know, when I think of the wallet, I don't know if everyone's seen the episode on Friends with George Costanza that had this huge wallet that wouldn't even fit into his back pocket, and it had a couple of rubber bands that kept it together. But a wallet, that's the old wallet with things falling out of it and not secure. The new wallet of the future is obviously secure and does many, many more things than what you could fit into the old wallet. But Dinesh, if you could just talk to us about Africa and Mauritius. I know Africa has probably more smartphones than people, and they're really ready for what a wallet and tokenization can do. But if you can talk a little bit about that.
I will. But first, I want to add something to Tim. It's interesting because I'm from the world of payments and I wear a lawyer hat. So wallets, Apple Pay is a wallet. And wallets are going to be the future of payments. There's a very important reason for that. As Tim said, first, it's about identity. Second, it's about security. And third is about privacy management. So the anti-money laundering laws globally around the world are designed such that the future of payments will be wallets. And it is happening all over the world because wallets generally designed with these three components to meet the requirements of anti-money laundering laws globally. Now, Daniele talked about So the future with digital assets of payments is tokenization and wallets. So if I can take it back like to Africa, we are already working like in, well, not with the tokenization yet, but in the world of remittances, for instance. Let's say Africans who are staying in Canada, they are working there and they want to send their money to Kenya or to Congo or to DRC. They are already doing it through wallets. So this is something that is already existing. And the future of payments globally, and especially in Africa, will be through wallets and probably tokenization. And it's largely driven by the ease of wallets, but also by the anti-money laundering laws that are enforced globally around the world today.
And especially because of what we're going through now, it's compressing time. Yeah, great. Thank you for your response. And then Dr. Zaid, if you can kind of share with us, and Dr. Zaid is the president of eHealth Global, and if you can share with us your views on a wallet and what that means.
Absolutely. So, you know, one thing that, I mean, Tim, the description was fantastic. One way that I look at the wallet, when I'm talking to patients even, is that I see the wallet almost like our home. So you have locked doors, let's say, throughout your home. You can unlock your front door and allow people into your home to access parts of your house. Each of the rooms within your house has a lock on it. And each room, let's say, represents a different component of your lifestyle. So it might be your health, it might be your finance, it might be your recreational aspects, other things. And so as an individual, as a homeowner, you can first of all elect to have someone come into your home by unlocking the front door, and you can give them access to only certain rooms. So for example, you might give them access to your healthcare room. The beauty that I love about having that control for patients is that it really provides, puts the control back in the patient's hands. So even though I'm the healthcare provider, even though the hospital provides surgical backup and services, and the labs provide laboratory investigations, and the radiologists provide that, the patient still controls the flow of that information and knows who exactly is accessing that information. The beauty of it is that by bringing it all together in one home, in situations like, for example, COVID's a great example, you can now start to integrate a lot of these rooms together. So for example, let's say that I have a patient who now has lost their job and is eligible to apply for a COVID grant from the government, but is also sick with COVID. I can now bring together their healthcare portfolio, showing that they are sick and they have the test results to show that. We can bring in their financial information from their job loss, etc., and we can tie it in with a software like COVID, for example, that we have, that can bring it all together and say, okay, this person's not only eligible, but they're verified as being truthful in terms of their access to the support systems. So for the healthcare aspects, I love it because it actually not only allows control, but it gives access to so many different parts of our life that we really need to deliver the best kind of healthcare we have.
I love that analogy. Thank you. That makes it very clear, and especially
Really
between health and finance and all the different areas. And that's something that's important to understand, that there are different levels of authentication and different levels that people can get in. So it's kind of taking the Airbnb where you rent out a room, but you're not going to allow people access to the other parts of your home or something like that. So
exactly.
Great, thank you. And we've got to wrap this up here pretty quickly, but I want to ask the same question, Daniele, to yourself and to Michael. Daniele.
Yeah, first of all, the wallet is, you can see the wallet as similar to a digital bank in a way, where you put under custody and under safety the assets that you own, like, for example, digital identity as well as tokens or crypto coins. We should not forget the security element behind the wallet, because the wallet is the element which is always targeted by hackers, for example, in platforms like exchanges, because they want to steal data, money, whatever, and it's like people trying to robbery to a bank.
Right.
So security element over there, it's super important. And at the end, for me, more and more, the wallet will be commoditized in a way that everyone will have a digital wallet, and it will be everyone's decision to decide which level of security, eventually to put insurances on top in case some theft, in case of some attacks. And eventually there might be some custom features for which when you do wallet-to-wallet transaction, you can add and improve the customer experience among the peers doing the transaction. They will be still marketed. So, and that will be part of our interactions.
Excellent. Thank you. And one thing that was another question, but I'll just use another analogy with the current wallet that you carry with you. You can put any kind of currency you want, whether it's U.S. currency or currency.
Well, I mean, let's say from a fiat, so the traditional currencies. Technically, yes, it's pretty simple. When it comes down to the new digital money, let's say from Bitcoin downwards plus specific coin, it requires that the wallet is being integrated with that blockchain protocol. So this means, but this, again, this is a technology that will move at, the speed of light. And more, when the people issuing a new token, what they're first doing is try to make sure that this integration of this token is as smooth as possible to the most common wallet in the world. So that's part of a distribution activity. Yeah.
Great. And Tim, we've got to wrap up. I'll let you kind of take anything off of what you're thinking, top of your head before we wrap up, and then I'll.
Well, I think that what we've seen is this amazing confluence of different thought leaders, ideas, business models, and also personal caring and influence of all of these leaders in the world through this series of The World From Here. And I want to thank everybody for that. What we hope to do as we continue to do these webinars is extend this community of thought leaders. We all are connected. We're all working together. We're all forming these business models together around what it means for blockchain, block search globally, and how we can bring this. So we'll continue to have our teams of people throughout the world, and this think tank of people together at different times, and we're pushing this. This is not something that we're just talking about every week. I have the great opportunity to work with the teams and the people here, talk to them every single week, building this, and thank you for that, by the way. It's exciting, and I want everybody who's listening out there to know that we're making this happen. Thank you for being part of listening, learning. Our goal is to help you come along with us and be part of the solution. We all need solutions right now. More than anything else, we need out-of-the-box thinking. Throw the box away. It doesn't exist anymore. Let's rethink this world and make it a better place. This is how it's happening. Doesn't matter if it's sports or finance or payments or law or health. It's all changing, and we're here to be effectively changing it for the better. So thank you for that, and all the great questions. Like, the questions make us think even more. I know every time I walk away, I'm like, yeah, we should start thinking about that and making something happen there. So we're about making it happen, not just talking. We are actually doing it.
Right. Great. Thank you, Tim. We'll wrap up. Dinesh, thank you so much for joining us again from Mauritius. We truly appreciate it, and we know you've got many options and many things that you're doing, and you're going many different places, so thank you for joining us.
Thank you. That's great to be part of the team.
Yep, absolutely.
Look forward to doing great things with BlockCert in Africa.
Well, we're super excited to be there.
We are. And thank you, Dr. Zaid. And you sent something to a few of us yesterday, the Bill Gates, as he was meditating what this all means. And I'll send that out to anybody who joined this webinar, because it really hit me.
Reflective.
Yeah, it was just an awesome thought process. So, and Daniele, thanks again for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me here. It's great to be here.
Absolutely. Be safe in Italy. And then Michael, thank you again for joining us for the second time. We appreciate it.
You're welcome. I'm honored to learn from all of you.
Absolutely. So with that, join our conversation on Telegram, blocksearch.com, or Twitter at Tim S. Vasco, or at Twitter at BlockSearchBuzz, or on LinkedIn at BlockSearch, and lots of places where you can join the conversation or learn what's going on. We're working around the globe, obviously, and we have people 24/7 working somewhere, and it's a pretty amazing thing, this digital world that we live in. And what's amazing to me, we've had some discussions here about, like Michael, you said, jumping on a plane and going to New Zealand and, you know, spending a week doing that versus what can be accomplished here via video conferences. And there are many different things that I think we're going to see change, that have already changed, that we're going to bring with us into our new world, that are now our new normal. So thanks again for joining us.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you, everybody. And we'll talk to you next week. We'll have another episode of The World From Here, exit strategy, and it'll be exciting to see what comes out of that.
Agreed. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good day. Be safe.
Yeah.
Be safe, stay healthy, and stay digital.